much ado, please join me in welcoming to Storytime our special guest. First off, Dr. LATOYA Council, welcome to Storytime.
Hi.
And we've got Dr. CAROLYN CHOI. Welcome to Storytime.
Hi, everyone. Good morning.
Thank you. And of course, good morning to you, Dr. Chelsea Johnson.
Hello. Thanks for having us. We're so excited to be here.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad that, you all could make time to be here with us. I know it's early in the morning, especially for us on the West Coast. So do you mind just maybe let's start with Dr. Council. Where are you joining us from today? How is it? It's very windy out here in Oakland.
It is rainy out here in Philadelphia, so a little overcast. I'm joining from Philly, y'all. Yeah. Go Eagles.
Tough weekend last weekend.
Yeah. Talk about it.
Dr. Chelsea.
I'm calling in from the Midwest, Minneapolis, Minnesota. We're 10 degrees out here.
Oh,
I'm cozy inside.
No, 60, and I'm thinking it's cold out here. How about you, Dr. CAROLYN?
I'm calling in from sunny Los Angeles. It's been very, very warm, and I'm cozy inside and out.
Well, welcome all of you. Thank you so much for being here with us again today on Storytime. And please do follow Intersection Allies so you can keep learning more from these wonderful women that we have here on Storytime. And talking of which, we have this brand new book, this brand new baby that we're celebrating here today, Love Without Bounds. Before we even go into talking about Love Without Bounds, I have to talk about Intersection Allies. We make room for all. So how did this idea come up? Anybody that could take it?
Well, we came together while we were in grad school at the University of Southern California. All three of us were writing our dissertations in sociology. We were also activists at the time. And if you remember 2017, it was a really tumultuous moment. We had just had a big election. There were women's marches all around the country and around the world. And we realized that a lot of the conversations we were having in our classroom, our university classroom, weren't really happening out there in the activist community. And they also weren't reaching people of all ages and K through 12 education. Oh. So we thought, what would be an interesting kind of experimental way of writing about social theory for kids? And that's how Dr. LATOYA came up with the idea. She was like, what if we read a kid's book about intersectionality? And Dr. CAROLYN and I were like, yeah, that sounds amazing. How do we do it? So it ended up being an experiment of being first-time authors, writing for a new audience. But we found that it really met the moment for years to come as different events around the world, different refugee crises, George Floyd in 2020, the pandemic, the book was ready and waiting to help parents and teachers have tough conversations with their kids in a meaningful way. So that's how Intersection Allies got started.
And before I come to you too, Dr. Council and CAROLYN, just wondering too, when you mentioned, Dr. Chelsea, you mentioned those conversations not happening in certain classrooms, in K-8, K-12 education. We were struggling. Like, we wanted to have those conversations, but I think because of a combination of factors, either lacking the language to have to share with the kids and so on. And so it was just like people at times were sharing articles like, oh, here's an article you can read and how can you talk to kids about it and so on. And so trying to decipher that and, bring it down to the level of kids without losing the importance, the information that it's carrying, without diluting it. And so, I wish I had Intersection Allies at that time, but I'm glad that it is here now. And for you, LATOYA, I know that, you said you had this idea. Why did you think writing it with others would be better than just going about on your own?
Well, anyone can have an idea. Thank you for that question, but it really takes a whole bunch of skill sets that honestly just one person doesn't have, right? I could say, yeah, write for children because I've worked in like a lot of children's spaces. I was in summer camp for 8 to 10 years. And like, I really am always around youth. They're vibrant. So I could say, yeah, let's write a children's book, right? For all ages. But artistically, Dr. Chelsea has that, right? Ability to do research and bring in that research level to the book. That's Dr. CAROLYN. And so an idea is great, but I'm also a feminist, right? I'm a Black feminist. And the way I was taught about doing these types of things is it's better to do it in sisterhood and in collaboration with others, right? Mm-hmm. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. So one person, it's honestly, to do something like this, you need more than one person. Kudos to folks who do it by themselves, but not kudos at the same time,
And for you, CAROLYN, how did it feel when this idea was sold to you? Because we can say no to ideas, right? Or, this is outrageous, this is whatever. But like, what sold it to you?
Well, actually, it was an idea that organically came out of us being in discussion and conversation with each other in our feminist classes. So we were taking feminist theory together and we were going to conferences, feminist conferences, and then just kind of feeling a little bit of a gap where we were having these vibrant discussions in these academic conferences, but that it was really like missing in translating this for the broader audience who really needs this right now, right? And so it was an idea that like came about really organically. We were all thinking about public sociology, which means like being able to share sociological concepts, understand our positionality, our origin story, putting that all into context with social structure as well as identity, right? And so for us, it was all about, like, how can we be able to like bring this to everybody, right? Like, this is super useful. As you said, Mr. Limata, like if we had this growing up, it would have been so perfect because we would have been really empowered, right? And we would have been able to see that we were not alone and that, we have a whole community and a village out there, and I grew up during a time of zero social media and just AOL. So, like I was really isolated. But yeah, so I think this book was just one way that we could do public sociology, right? Like bring these concepts and ideas to our families, to the people we study. We study our people, our communities. And so as a way to bridge academic work, our investments in activism, as well as, our investments and membership within our communities was like a great way to kind of put it together, because this book, isn't just going into the hands of kids, but their entire households, right? Like grandparents, like aunties, and then we're reading it alongside our dogs, right? So that was kind of the idea.
No, I love that. And all that you say, really, I know too, because even in the book, you've included letters to the caregivers or their dogs. And I think that helps. It has helped me read that through and kind of get to understand it. And also just, I think the whole topic of intersectionality was something that I really honestly had not heard about, or bits, but to hear it articulated in the way was when I read Intersectional Allies and got to read that book. And thank you, Dr. Chelsea, for, for being heaven sent and bringing that book. It was such a wonderful thing. I know that you have the book to read for us, and hopefully we'll come back for more conversation after this. But I know you have the book for us to read, and I'm always excited about days like this because I get to be read too. So I'll have you take it away, and I'll just bring the slides up, and all yours from now. So
awesome. Thank you. So we are so excited to read with you Love Without Bounds, an Intersection Allies book about families. So you'll see the concept of intersectionality. We can talk about it later if you're listening and you don't know what it is. So we'll illustrate it for you first. All right. Dr. Carolyn, take it away.
All right. Does everyone hear me? Cool. So this book is about your peeps, your crew, your folks, your kin, your chosen few. Everyone has a family, but each is special, as you'll see. Yours and hers, his and theirs, some big old groups, some tiny pairs. No matter the size or situation, it's love that serves as the foundation.
Some families include more than a few. Some families are just teams of two. Grown-ups and kids, moms and dads, all families are lovely if love's what you add. My fam is mom, mama, and me. We're a nuclear family. Mom sings me songs, mama tucks me in. I feel their love through the time we spend.
Our dearly beloveds have gathered today to witness my parents' wedding day. My wise abuela, my sneaky pet cat, my out-of-town auntie, so flying her hat, friends who hug and primas who play, siblings, uncles, and neighbors, hooray! A joyous feast in celebration of a family on the cusp of creation. The beat of the music, laughter surrounds.
We are a family. We love without bounds.
My folks told me the coolest thing. Next year, I'll have a new sibling. What will they like? How will they be? Will everything change when it's not just me? One thing's for sure, I'll do my part and share the love that's in my heart. And when the baby starts to grow, I'll teach them everything I know. Through thick and thin, through lows and highs, siblings can be the best allies.
My sis was born in the Midwest, but my life started with the quest. Just like a vine joining a tree, I was adopted into my family. After praying and waiting and lots of wishing, they welcomed me home, the peace they've been missing. 2 family trees, 1 history. My story is what makes me me.
In my loving family, 2 legacies created me. When flower buds start to appear, our freedom holidays are here. A Seder marks the start of spring, and on Juneteenth we proudly sing, lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Over barriers that made us hurt and hide to this place where we can love with pride. Now let's pause here because happy Black History Month, everybody. Here we have one of my favorite holidays, Juneteenth. So this page is all about traditions, and one big tradition in my family is celebrating Juneteenth, the day when some of the last enslaved African Americans in Galveston, Texas, learned of their freedom over 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. So now every year, my husband and I invite all of our friends over to Minneapolis for a weekend-long celebration of Black joy. So I know many of you might have traditions in your family that you hold dear. I'm curious, Dr. Carolyn, Dr. LATOYA, do you have a tradition you want to share? Maybe even Mr. Limata, if you want to pop back in and let us know a favorite tradition of yours.
Yeah, well, I'll start. I think for me, it's just would always gather back home whenever I was around April, just have some good meals. And it was not named, but we just knew we came together. We came together and it was rice and potatoes and everything was just, yeah, you can't beat that. Chicken. Yeah, it's just every time. And even now when I go back, I think we're almost every time trying to recreate that, just that coming together with all my cousins and sisters.
I love that so much. I think all traditions like that show the values of our families, the value of togetherness, of spending time well spent. LATOYA, I see you're off mute. You want to share a favorite tradition of yours?
Yes, so every Christmas or December, my family's really into popcorn. And so we will always eat popcorn together over Christmas. That's like our big family snack.
I love it so much. I love it. Well, before we move on, I do want to mention Lift Every Voice and Sing. If you're at home, wave at the camera, wave at the screen if you know the song. This song was written by one of my favorite poets, James Weldon Johnson, in 1900, the Negro National Anthem. And it is, if you look it up, read the lyrics, it is one of the most beautiful pieces of poetry ever written. And for the last 123 years, it has inspired groups of activists over and over again. So just one of the things that we hope that you carry on and explore with your family after the book. But without further
relation,
what did you say?
Any relation with Johnson?
I hope so. I hope so. If a little bit of that brilliance can rub up onto me, I would love that. But you know, I've got probably one of the most common names in the history of this hemisphere.
All right, I'll leave you to it.
All right, let's keep going.
With each generation, our love compounds. We are a family we love without bounds.
My Nanai is just an ocean away in a place I'd love to visit one day. When the sun sets here for Grandma and me, it's tomorrow across the big blue sea. Ding dong goes the sound of our video chats. We goof off and giggle in our matching hats. Some people might think if a parent is gone, their love and care has also moved on. But the biggest love a parent can give is a sacrifice so their family can live.
They had deployed my dad to a faraway place, miles from our home here on the base. We watched the news both day and night. I whisper, "Daddy, I hope you're all right." We've got each other, but my whole family misses the warmth of his hugs, the itch of his kisses. We march and pray for the wars to cease so all of our families can live in peace.
Congratulations! Come take your degree. You've graduated from Ally Academy. So I move my tassel from left to right, throw my hat in the air and smile bright. A bus ride away in a distant town, a big part of my world jumps up and down. When I hear his voice, I wipe a tear. Today was perfect, except I wish Dad was here. He's my biggest cheerleader, and bottom line, this achievement is his as much as it's mine. So we're going to pause here for a minute, and we're going to do some little reflection. So if you've noticed, the last 3 pages that we read to you, we're talking about families who are trying to find ways to love across space and time, right? And so those are other different family forms that we want to honor and make sure that we show in the book. And in this page specifically, you have someone who's trying to figure out a relationship with their dad while their dad is incarcerated in jail. And that's really, really hard. And if we think hard, we can relate to some of these experiences because we just got on in a different phase of COVID-19. And if we can remember, we all had to figure out ways to show up for family across space and time with the pandemic. Dr. Chelsea, do you want to kind of like talk about that a little bit for us? And Mr. Limata, if you want to pop back in.
Sure, yeah. My family was definitely trying to reimagine ways to show love during the pandemic. I remember July 2020, my niece was born in Seattle. I was far away. My parents were in North Carolina. My other brother was in New Jersey. And in a moment like that, my family is the first to show up, be there, help everybody recover, cook a meal. And we just couldn't do that this time around with the state of the world. So, we improvised. We were like, we will send an Uber Eats, a DoorDash, an Instacart, so that every single day they have food on their doorstep. And so reimagining ways to show love across distance and time now that's become a tradition. We have had 4 more babies. I'm about to have a baby any day. And now this like virtual meal train is just what we do. So it's kind of amazing that there's some new ways to be there that could have always happened, but now reimagined to help us love better as a tradition. But so Mr. Limata, any ways that you think about showing love across space and time?
Oh, yeah, all the time. And, you know, you mentioned coming into the pandemic. That was one of the things, I think one of the really hardest times of my life, because I was thinking of the people. And I think at that point, too, there was this fear, like, how will this disease, you know, like, how will it affect African countries, for example? And, you know, like there was this whole thing of like, well, you know, infrastructure, medical care and so on, how will it affect that? And I had that fear for my own family because most of my family are there. And so just thinking is like, how are we going to deal with this? And thankfully, you know, like it's like there was just so much that I think that the medical system was able to withstand because of structures that had been built in place over a long period of time of dealing with different epidemics and so on. And so that for me was a big worry at the beginning, because you remember we were washing everything. We were wiping down, you know, you get your DoTTir or whatever, you're wiping it down and then they were worried about me because they kept hearing in the news how much was going on here. And so it was this constant checking in with each other. But I think that was important because we had that downtime to really call each other and check in. And I think with my sisters, we always called each other, but I think we ramped it up even more to just keep in touch and check in. And that definitely saw me through. And and I've done that, taken an extra step of making sure I contact people, family, just like, hey, I'm just checking in on you, just saying hi. So yeah.
Love that. Thank you, Mr. Limata. We're going to keep going. This is good.
Some families like mine change over time. When my dads got married, our families combined. My bonus dad came with kids of his own. Who would have thought I'd miss playing alone? But we circle around to share holiday fun, giving time, getting closer together as one. Families evolve. Who we love can too. We cherish the old and welcome the new.
School days with mom, weekends with dad. My parents made the best choice they had. When they split, everything changed. In fact, my entire life rearranged. Boxes and toys, new apartments and houses, new rules, new schools, and even new spouses. But in choosing themselves, they both chose me. We'll always be a family. I'd like to pause here for a little bit on baby CAROLYN's page and introduce an important point that families aren't always warm and happy. Sometimes really hard things happen to and in our families. And a lot of the times we don't have a say over why. And so a little bit of background behind this page. My parents got divorced when I was young, and I mostly grew up with my mom and my younger sister. And growing up, I used to feel ashamed about my dad not being in the picture. But it was actually later in life, during COVID, as well as the writing of this book, that we ended up reconnecting in a really special way. I got to be there for him during a really difficult period in his life when he was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. And so writing this book and also reconnecting with my dad, this really taught me how important it is to honor both the difficult feelings as well as understand the power of reconciliation. And so, you know, that difficult feelings about parental separation can really coexist with healing. And so that's why I decided to name the family on this page after my own, the CHOIs, as an act of memorialization of my family and everything that it's gone through. So it's a very special page to me. And, you know, I know this feels very heavy. But if this brings up any feelings or experiences for anyone, please pop in the chat, and feel free to share if you'd like or feel comfortable. How about the authors or Mr. Limata? Is this like bringing up feels for you?
I feel like I should let Dr. Kanso and Dr. Chelsea say something.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think what you might have seen on a couple of the pages, so the page before about a blended family, the page with a new baby, is that all families change and evolve over time. Families grow, families rearrange, families shrink, and all of those can bring up big emotions. So in thinking about the ways that your family might have changed, I did mention I'm having a baby any day. There's excitement in that, and there's also tons of anxiety in that too. So I wanted to share with the readers, all of those feelings are valid. Change is hard. But as Carolyn's story showed, like change also opens up new opportunities for relating to our family in new ways. So both of those things.
Yeah, for me too. I think like definitely feelings come up. I grew up with my mom, and but I think even if I had to choose, I would not pick a better parent. Like she was just like, my mom was independent early, and I think she ran her household that way, like really instilled a sense of independence, but still with structure. And it was just so much that I learned from her in terms of just self-discipline and being true to yourself, and so much that I think I got to have a great relationship with my dad, but I know that I think I am very much my mom's child, and so much that I do is shaped that from that. So yeah, as you were saying that in here, and I remember too as a kid feeling, because everybody would talk about, having both parents or this, or, like even just seemingly having, better things at school, whether it's better shoes or what seemed like better shoes and so on. And you're thinking like, wait, but there's only one income where I come from, and we can't afford that. But, like there's so much more that I gained from my own family that I think I wasn't focused on at that time. And now that I get time to look back, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I had so much more to offer.
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm also my mom's kid.
All right. So sometimes the family we're born into doesn't make us feel how we want to. And in these moments, our closest friends step in and help our hearts to mend. A pen pal, a teammate, a snuggly pup, those who care for you and build you up. There's so much of life we can't control, and our chosen family can make us whole. This is our big homage to chosen families, because while some families are related by blood, some families are created by choice. And we will find our family again and again over the course of life. So Dr. Carolyn, Dr. LATOYA, we always call each other sister scholars. They've been my chosen family. Lots of us have lived really far away from our families in different points over the last 10, 15 years that we've been in each other's lives. And so we've been, the shoulder to cry on. We've been, the confidant to each other. And so family is big, family is expansive, family is what you make it, and we want to make sure that you all know that too. All right, kicking it over.
There are times we must tell our loved ones goodbye, and often too early, their souls meet the sky. We honor the moments we spent together. Through our memories, they live on forever. With a keepsake or a walk to their resting place, we remember their love, their laugh, their face. Watching over us each day and night, our ancestors are our guiding light. So we're just going to pause here for a quick minute to do like a little reflection, a little check-in. And we're going to talk about a really heavy topic, the loss of a loved one. It's not easy in some cases. In other cases, we might not feel sad. We might feel a little like, okay. All of those emotions are valid, right? We have different, as we just learned with chosen family, we all have different relationships with family members, and that shows up in death too, and how we the emotions and the responses we have with losing someone, and all of that's important. There's no one way to feel about losing a family member. A fun fact about me, I don't have parents. Both of my parents are dead. My dad died when I was 3, and I didn't really know him. I heard his voice for the first time in a video in 2021. And my mom died when I was 18 years old, 2 months into my Spelman experience. Dr. Chelsea remembered when my mom died. And it was really, really hard. And so I honor them because I know they're my ancestors, and I know they're always watching over me and with me. And then I have an extended family that just pours into me all the time. And I have friends who are like family that I can go to as well. And so, if you're feeling this way, if this brings up something for you, that's okay. Talk to the folks around you, journal about it, take care of yourself. Anybody want to respond really quickly? Any thoughts from the crowd on the screen or Mr. Limata?
No, so much that just resonates. And and you mentioned, I think I'll just piggyback on that point you mentioned about at times losing family members and feeling a certain way, or feeling, looking at the other person, like, how are they feeling? And we all show emotion in different ways. And I think one of the ones for me was when I lost my grandma, my mom's mom. She was my buddy. She was my friend. Like, this is somebody I would live with for so long. And I saw my grandma. She was a trooper. Her husband died when my grandfather, who I'm named after, died when she was pregnant with their last child, my uncle. And so she raised, or at least, like her oldest kids were in high school at the time. So she raised all these kids and looked up, took care of them. And she never remarried. She just focused all her energies on her kids. And us 2 grandkids, like, taught me so much. But to have lived with her, and then she suffered a stroke in 97. And to see her come from the trooper that she was, this warrior woman that would hold, like a plow behind these oxen drawing stuff, and to see her lying down in the house, like needing help to go to the bathroom, needing a walker to move, and that just for me was crashing my spirit. And so it came to when she eventually passed, which was 10 years later after her stroke, a part of me was relieved, because I was like, that's no way for her to leave. Because if I'm feeling like this, I can only imagine how she was feeling, coming from this person who was in our family, somebody that we were all looking up to. I definitely looked at her. I never saw my grandfather. I never met my grandfather on that side, but just this person that was the anchor of our family. And to see her in that state where we were now the ones kind of helping her was just like, I think if there's rest on the other side, like, I hope they get that. You deserve it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I connect with that. With losing my great aunt recently, she was fine, but then she was tired, and so it's like rest for her on the other side. Thank you for sharing, Mr. Limata.
Oh, absolutely, and I see too that we have a comment too.
Thank you, Monica.
Yes, absolutely. Honoring and remembering. And one thing that I think of when I think of this page is how much the choices and the values of our ancestors show up in us. So you talk about your grandmother being so hardworking. Look at you, Mr. Limata, doing all of this. It's those bits of character and those examples that are passed on again and again, even when we haven't met them. Sometimes when we see that example, it's those values that get passed on through our families too. So that's another way to honor and remember and celebrate their influence on us through the generations.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Dr. CAROLYN.
All right. So there's no perfect family form. No family ever fits the norm. Although bullies and laws can make us feel shame, every family is important and no two are the same.
So what does family really mean? They're the people who love us and make us feel seen. The folks who give us time and care by sharing with us and just being there. A shoulder to lean on, a space to be free. Whoever gives us that is our family.
In faraway places or right next to you, those yet to be born and who've passed on too. Growing and changing together or apart, your family are those who live in your heart.
And can we say this all together? To the loved ones we miss.
And the new kin we found. We are a family. We love without bounds.
Yay.
Yay. Thank you so much for reading the book with us. And thank you, Mr. Limata, for participating.
No, that is just so powerful. Absolutely powerful. You know, I love the first book. And it's always, I get a sense now of what people say when they're like, no, you cannot love one child more than the other. Like, now I'm in love with this book too. But I really mean that. Like, there's just such powerful messages in here. And, you know, to just kind of get us into the next step where we talk a little bit more about the book. Dr. Korb here, Michelle Korb, she's my professor, actually, science professor in my education program, and a mentor for a long time now, and great musician too. She says, this is so incredible. You know, you're bringing together such incredible messengers. And I want to stick to that word, messengers. What is your message? You are messengers and you're bringing us this. What is your message?
Well, I'll start us off. I will say that our message is going back to the first book. I can say, I'm like you, I can't love one more than the other. It's making room, right? And I think allyship and making room is just so powerful. And to start off with that and to carry that through to making room for diverse and different types of families, right? All families, right? Another way to make room. And then to add love in there. So I think the message for me, and I'm curious who everyone else thinks, is making room is very important. And we have to do that. We must do that.
Yeah, love that. Dr. Chelsea?
I love that.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no. Yeah, I love that too. Yeah, making room. This book is about making room to create conversations around families. Right. And also the title of the book, Love Without Bounds. Like, what does this mean? You know? And for us, what that meant was loving despite the barriers, despite the biases and the stereotypes that are around us. Right. And it means that we have to actively work towards changing and opening up those barriers and acknowledging for so many people who may be isolated, that love can show up in so many different combinations, right? Through our chosen family, our blood family, our CLC family, our Mr. Limata family, our pets, right? And so we really want to encourage readers to love without bounds, and really inspire the next generation of young folks to respect difference, lead with compassion, and actively work to create more loving communities, where a lot of people don't feel the need to hide anymore, and hide who and how they love. So that's really what we mean when we say that we're loving without bounds. So I just wanted to add that.
Love it. Yeah. Thank you for highlighting that. Dr. Chelsea, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. So, you know, here's a little sociology bit. We'll put our professor hat on. But you might notice as you look back on the characters that rules and norms and governments shape our families in so many intimate ways. We have this feminist saying that the personal is political. So oftentimes we think about our families as like just a personal thing, just you. It doesn't have to do with broader society, when in fact it really does. So when you think about incarceration, deployment, the family that was separated by a national border, where they were Zooming to stay in touch, who can get divorced, who can get married. All of those things are rules and norms that can change and have changed. So if you think back to the page where we sang the Negro National Anthem, Juneteenth, the Mayo Sachs family, the word loving on that page was capitalized and italicized to remember Richard Loving and his wife, Mildred Loving, who challenged the Racial Integrity Act in Virginia all the way up to the Supreme Court and made it so interracial marriage could be legal. And it really wasn't until just a couple months ago that the Respect for Marriage Act was passed and codified that into the Constitution. And it took another, 48 years from Loving versus Virginia for same-sex couples to get that right. So those things can change. They do change when brave people challenge the norms and the stereotypes around them. And so when we think about loving without bounds, it's also, a call to action to make our communities safer, more affirming, more loving for all of the ways that people do love. So things can change from here. And it's up to us to make sure that they change in a direction that is, that's helpful and loving to all.
Yeah, no, I love that. And, like in just highlighting in the book, you mentioned, I think evolution is, what was it? Who we love can too. Evolution is changing, I think, was it? Or evolution in thinking. And so, and who we love can too. And I just want really, I appreciate you highlighting that, because it is that, it is a process. It is so much, it's work. It's an active thing. And so thank you for highlighting that. But I also wanted to mention too, you mentioned in your letter to the readers in the book, you say how, you mentioned that we want to push those social systems to honor what we know to be true. But then somebody out there might be wondering, how do I play a part? But I'm just a kid. But I'm just, like a lowly worker, a lowly person. I'm not in the high offices, the corridors of power. How do we push for change? How does each one of us play a part?
I think it's through love. It's through accepting other people, understanding that we all have differences from one another. That doesn't make you better or worse or good or bad. But in your own classrooms, in your own communities, in your own playgrounds, opening up your friendship circles, your communities, your sphere of influence, to love those around you. So I know we talked about, a couple of us feeling ashamed about what our family looked like or who was or wasn't there. And being the person on the other side of that doesn't reaffirm that or, push people into that feeling. Like we can do that by recognizing that all families are different. No two are the same. And we're not striving to be the same. We're just striving to be loved and respected and included. So, your sphere of influence, your classroom, your sidewalks, your playground, those are all spaces where you can actively show loving without bounds to those around you.
True to that. Anybody want to add anything, Dr. Caroline, Dr. LATOYA?
Yeah, and this just this dovetails with the concept of making room. In one of our elementary school talks, we had a conversation with a girls school 4th grade classroom where they were making room, making people feel seen and comfortable by challenging the dress code. And so that's kind of one of the ways in which we can show respect towards one another, and we can make them feel comfortable, and we can include them as a part of our classroom family so that nobody feels left out, right? And so those are kind of the concrete ways in which young people can see themselves as active agents in you know, making room as well as creating that sense of community in any space they enter.
Mm. Yeah, that's so true. Dr. LaToya, anything?
I just say this is good. This is good.
Oh, I agree with you. And just also too, you know, like you mentioned, I think it was Dr. Chelsea, you mentioned brave. You used the word brave in response to one of the questions. And I was just wondering too, in that, you know, you talk about adoption. And I remember too, even just thinking about when I was growing up, all we thought about adoption was, oh, it was some poor kid that needed a loving family, and not thinking about it in a more, you know, like in a way of how these relationships were about, these families came together. You just thought of it in one way where it's like, oh yeah, this is like this, oh, this poor kid. And so just thinking, like you mentioned adoption there, and you know, like I appreciate you for normalizing it, talking about it in this book. And then you also mentioned school days, I'm with mom, weekends, I'm with dad. And we know that families are, oh, you know, like they're different. So, and then, you know, you mentioned my dad. You know, I'm with my mommy and my mama, and you know, like all these diverse families. How do you find the courage to talk about such issues, especially in this age where we have people censoring books, people censoring what we say, and so on, and just, you know, like people who are fearful of what's different, who are fearful of what they see or don't understand. And so just wondering, where do you get the courage to put your message out?
That's such a great question. We get the courage from our communities. So because this is a book of research, these stories come from scores and scores of real people stories in the community. They come from having our friends and our wider network read and reread the stories and talk about what spoke to themselves in their own childhoods, what they're struggling and going through now. So what you're seeing isn't really just the three of us writing and reading. You are seeing hundreds of people's voices represented. And I think when you come together collectively, you know, as Dr. LaToya was talking about earlier, like when you are not alone, and you are having conversation, thinking deeply in community, that gives me a lot of courage. And we want you all to feel that too. So part of that, like consolidating many, many different voices, comes from, you know, the academic literature too. So if you open the back of the book, you'll see the work cited, and you can read more deeply into the ways that people have been thinking about this over time. So the book is one representation of that, but there are many, many other voices. It's just the translation of those voices and the consolidation of those voices. And that's what gives me a lot of bravery, because, you know, it's coming from so much collective action.
Dr. LaToya, Dr. CAROLYN, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I would just say this is why it's important to do this work with more than one person, right? This book was really hard for me in many ways, because I did have to reflect on my own childhood and how I felt growing up. I too grew up in a community where moms were at the time staying home, or if they were going to work, they were oftentimes to pick their kids up from school or to drop their kids off at school. The only kids who were on the bus, the social class was present, right? You knew the kids who rode the bus, and you knew the kids who got picked up in the cars, right? And I was the kid who was riding the bus. And so I felt, you know, just ashamed. And as a kid in school, because kids were like, why is your mom always working? Or why isn't your mom here? And I'm like, well, because I don't have a dad at home, you know, like we gotta eat, like things have to get done. And so even like writing the book and thinking about families, it does make you reflect on your own family. And that can bring up some hard memories or some tough conversations or things. And it's so good to do that work in a group, especially if you're if the goal is to honor all family forms, right? And like Dr. Chelsea and Dr. Carolyn said, there's no perfect family form. And we're not striving for all families to look the same. And so the courage with that is being able to have those hard conversations, being able to challenge what we consider acceptable, what we consider normal, and really questioning that, especially as you said, we're in this phase where you have states like Florida, where right now they're trying to control what Black history is being taught in schools and in higher education spaces. And so it does take a lot of courage, but the courage, it's better. And this type of work, I think, does better in a collective versus in the individual, for sure.
Absolutely love it. Yeah. Dr. Carolyn?
Yeah. To piggyback off of Dr. LaToya, this book and writing it was one big therapy session for me. Just to be able to think back to my past, like remember, commemorate, the sad and the happy moments, right? And so being able to go through that process of remembering that and not, like growing up, I think I oftentimes kind of like really like, like demonized certain experiences and saw it as, negative. But, as you like think back, as you're writing the book, as well as being in conversation with other communities and seeing yourselves, seeing your story and yourself in so many different ways, right? Especially like how we talked about loving across distance and space. We showed many different examples of that, right? So that actually gave me a lot of courage to be able to tell my story and even be able to share it in our presentations, right? That's something that I like decided I'm going to intentionally do because I know that it'll help someone else out there, And so I think it's like the process of making this a brave space, creating that safe space for us by making it a brave space that really helped in terms of, being able to talk about this stuff, very, very personal stuff that, is really, really hard to bring up in the classrooms or even in your social circles, even among your friends, right? I feel like it took me adulthood to be able to really talk about my family in an open way. And so for me, I think it was this whole process that allowed me to like bring it into this full circle moment with the book.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you all for sharing. And, you just, when I say this book is just powerful and I appreciate it, and reading it today, reflecting with you all too. I think Dr. Carolyn, I'm with you on that. It's just brought up so much. And it's not so much as pain or looking at those things. No, it's actually a joy because it is kind of a release, being able to share this and talk to you all about it. And so with that, as we, wrap up, just thinking too, how do you self-care? With looking at material like this, researching, I'm sure you're dredging up all this stuff that you have to carry and hold. How do you self-care? Maybe we'll start with you, Dr. Carolyn, and then go to Dr. Kanso, and then Dr. Chelsea on that. But how do you self-care on a daily basis, or even after looking at material like this and coming back? How do you center?
Oh my goodness, that is a hard question. I feel like I still don't have a good handle on self-care, I have a hard time balancing things in my life. But definitely for me, I'm currently caring for my father, and it's hard because he's stubborn, and we're figuring out our relationship. But I take breaks. Sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, because things might happen and he might need space. And, I try my best to just kind of come back together. It's often through a meal at Sizzler, our favorite place, and just kind of talking through what happened. Also spending time with my pups. They have been my saving grace throughout grad school, as well as just navigating academia. And then, of course, just coming together with my sisters, Dr. Chelsea and Dr. LATOYA. I can turn to them for anything. And so for me, it's really kind of the social aspects of self-care that have allowed me to, you know, be here.
Appreciate that. Yeah, Dr. Conso.
Well, I often burn Palo Santo in my house. Dr. Carolyn would know. She lived with me for a little bit, but for real, I would say it would have to be. So I chant. So I identify as a Buddhist Christian, and so for me, that is a form of self-care. When I'm in a space where I just feel like it's just really getting really hard, I would go. I mean, I do that daily anyway. It's part of my daily practice, but I do a little more when it's really, really hard, and that really centers me. Just chanting, you know, and saying Nam Myoho Renge Kyo is a very important part, and it's a part of my identity. And baking. When I don't like to eat this stuff because I can't really have carbs like that, but I love to share it with others. So I bake, I cook, and I chant.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. But also just want to say something on that too. Thank you for also showing us that being a Christian or Christianity does not mean you putting that others down. Because I feel like there are others that use this as a tool to hurt others, to push hate. And, you know, and I had this conversation with a friend too recently who was saying, I am a Christian, I identify as a Christian, but I'm not out there to push it down on anybody or to say, you know, if you're not living like me, then you're not like, yeah, like, so it's about me. I need to reflect on what I'm doing. And so I really appreciate you highlighting that, showing that in the way that you're doing. Thank you, Dr. Chelsea.
I am in a very deep moment of self-care right now, just because babies could come anytime. So there's lots of like physical self-care I'm doing, of like moving my body. And then lots of like, you know, mental space centering self-care. So doing tons of meditation, hypnobirthing, lots of affirmations too, just telling myself like, you are strong, you are cared for, you're making good decisions, like saying those affirmations in present tense, like I'm doing it right now, you know, by living, I am doing it and I'm still here. So yeah, I am deep in a self-care moment. Mr. Limata, do you have any self-care practices that you want to share?
I do music. I listen to music so much, and just playing sports, but I like time to myself. So I find that I have so many, like most of the times people will say something and I have something to say about that because I've either read it somewhere or listened to it somewhere. When somebody mentioned that, you know, chosen family, and it's like, well, it's in the book, but it was, I think we talked about it in our conversation, and immediately my thoughts went to this saying in one of the languages back in Zambia called Bemba. And they say, if it was like that translates into friendships surpass family. And so as you were saying that, I was like, yeah, there are definitely moments that it is like that. There are friends who hold you down even more so than your, you know, blood family or the family that you're born into. But yeah, so yeah, no, for me, it's music. And I will belt out tunes that hopefully not many ears get to hear. But good for me.
That wasn't you on the intro then, was it?
No.
Okay. I was like, okay, Mr. Limata can sing. Look at that.
No, that's my friend Tim. But yeah, no, self-care for me is definitely my music. I listen to so much music and just, yeah, sing along. But yeah. Thank you for that. And thank you for sharing that. And just before we go to just a quick reminder to everybody that was joining us today and those that will join us later on, that we did have the amazing Dr. Trio of Dr. Chelsea, Dr. LATOYA, and Dr. CAROLYN here with us on Storytime, talking about their brand new book, Love Without Bounds, an Intersection Allies book about families. So please find these copies at your local library, or indeed, if you're able, find them where you find books. Thank you so much for joining in. And also remember too that you can follow them at these handles. You can find them, of course, they are the CLCcollective.com. And you can also find the book at DOTTIRpress.com, Love Without Bounds. So please go there and find the book. And of course, you can also follow Dr.